Hey guys, City Walk, City Wall here, and welcome back to Kobayashi Island. This episode is pretty fun. It's the first time that we're going to be working on the airport. A number of these episodes to come. And this time I kind of kept this episode a little bit shorter just because I wanted to show you guys sort of the bare bones functionality of the airport without doing any detailing whatsoever. So what we're working on this episode is creating custom taxiways and runways, connecting those up to custom gates and getting those gates hooked up to roads and just actually getting the airport working. So by the end of this episode, we are going to have citizens taking airplane trips, getting here by airplane, trucks exporting stuff to a cargo airport, airplanes importing things, and trucks delivering those goods all over the map. So pretty exciting. The first thing that you saw me do, where I was just like placing down roads and deleting them over and over, was I was messing with the parallel road mod to get myself like a really good preset for making these runways, where there's like the actual runway that's in the very center, and then directly to the left and the right of that there's runway extensions, and those runway extensions are from a particular pack of assets on the workshop, where some of them are completely plain. They just have like that asphalt texture. Some of them have lines, some of them have hash marks. And so what I did was directly to the left and the right of the runway are completely blank ones, and then just outside of that are dark ones with yellow hash marks. So it took me a while to get the placing and the spacing and the directions of all those correct in the parallel road mod. So that was the first thing you saw me do. And next thing that I did after I placed down the actual runways, once I got that preset working, was doing the same sort of process in order to make the taxiways. And that's just the taxiway with gray, yellow hash mark sidings on the edges of it. So that was a little bit of an easier preset to make because it's only 3 roads instead of 5. You just saw me do kind of an interesting thing. These airport runways aren't actually the same texture asphalt as the ploppable asphalt is, which you might expect. You'd think that this would be the same asphalt as like the roads and those ploppable surfaces, but they're not. They're slightly different. And so I was left with some little tiny areas where that texture should be, but it's like not there exactly. So I copied little tiny segments. You're seeing me do it right now in order to cover up those little areas where that texture should be, but I'm not able to use ploppable surfaces to fill that up. So as you might know, if you've ever made an airport using these airport roads in City Skylines, you probably realize that doing this is pretty finicky. Like it's not, you think that it's going to work, and for some reason it doesn't, or it works in an unexpected way. Like it's difficult to get the airplanes going exactly where you want them to go and doing exactly what you want them to do, or even coming at all. Sometimes you just like are like, why the hell? Why am I not having any airplanes? Like what's going on? So one of the things that I had to do here was have some of these entrances and exits between the runway and the taxiway, have some of them not actually connect. Like they look like they connect, they look like they're functioning, but in reality they're not. And I did that in order to just force airplanes to enter the runway at a specific place and exit the runway at a specific place. And I also have these runways set up where they don't actually both work in both directions. So, you know, at a normal airport, a runway like this would have airplanes taking off and landing on the same runway, but in City Skylines, that's not always the best idea, because even though it might not be 100% accurate to reality, the issue is that the airplanes in City Skylines, their AI sort of has issues when they're just like waiting around for an airplane to take off. Like there's not a very good air traffic control system that says this airplane should go now, this airplane should wait. They just like wait way more than they would normally in real life. And so you end up having like clogs, like traffic jams of airplanes as they're like trying to take off, if there's like even an airplane close to approaching. So it ends up being an issue in your airport where you can't really get airplanes like taking off and landing properly if you don't separate it out, where one of the runways is for taking off and the other one is for landing. So you just saw me do sort of an interesting thing where I made like a series of connections between the runway and the taxiway on one side of the airport, and it took a while, a lot of messing with these nodes. I didn't want to have to redo it for like basically the same thing on the other side of the airport, and so I just copied the entire thing, and now I'm kind of like connecting it back up so that it all looks good over on this side as well. One of the things that I was working on with this that I didn't actually include in the video here, mainly because I think it would be really boring, is these network extensions. I was noticing a thing when you're zoomed out really far and you're looking at any of them that meet at a 90-degree angle, like they just like jut into them in perpendicular directions, they start glitching out when you're too far away from them. There's something wrong with the asset where it's like, it looks fine up close, but as you zoom out, it starts to like glitch in a really awful way. And because I spent like 90% of this episode in basically like a satellite view, I was like so far away doing all this stuff, it was bothering me that that was happening. So at some point here off camera, I went through and redid like basically all the connections between these hash mark segments, where instead of having them meet at 90 degrees, I inserted like an additional little segment in there that does like a curve, you know, where it makes it so that there's no sharp angles. It's like everything is just like a little tiny curve instead, and that fixed the problem. You also just saw me kind of delete part of the runway, and I only really did that because I was noticing that it was kind of unnaturally big and large, and I wanted to scale down the size of it all just a little bit. So at this point, we're basically done with the runways and moving into the terminals. My thought for this is that we would basically do something a little bit similar to Heathrow Airport in London. If you've ever been there or looked at it on Google Maps, it's very interesting because the terminals are all connected by tunnel, so there's not like a physical thing that you can see from above that connects these terminals. They're kind of like islands in the middle of like a huge sea of pavement. And so that's what I wanted to do here. You just saw me place down all just sort of the bare bones of the terminals. And at this point I was kind of getting confused about where these taxiways were going, which directions where they were going in. So you're watching me now use the the prop line tool in order to place down like a ton of bushes and create arrows. So that's like generally the paths that I'm going to be placing down taxiways throughout this huge pavement area. And you're seeing me place down pavement now. You just saw me do it, but I will be deleting that in a little bit, mainly because these taxiway roads are the exact same color, and it's like extremely difficult to see what you're doing, and that's sort of why I placed down these arrows as well. As this was all just getting like a little bit confusing, not being able to see what was going on, and so I just kind of tried to make it as easy as I could. Deleted the pavement, had these arrows all over the place showing where these taxiways were going to go, because there's a lot of taxiways that end up going through these terminals in order to connect the taxiway roads to the terminal gates. The other thing that you saw me do a second ago when I placed down the terminals was I surrounded them all with prop airplanes. And the reason I did that, these are not going to be the final versions of the planes that are in this airport, but every time that I've made an airport in the past, what I end up doing, which has turned out to be a big mistake every single time, is I'll make a terminal, I'll start detailing it, I'll place planes around it and things, I'll make the next terminal, and then when I go to place planes there and make the taxiways that are in between the terminals, all of a sudden I realize, oh my god, there's not enough room for airplanes to go around here, and I end up having to do all this crazy stuff in order to squeeze in like a taxiway in between a bunch of parked airplanes. And so I never really end up leaving myself enough room between the terminals, and so placing down temporary airplanes all over the place was just sort of something that I needed to do right off the bat here to make sure that I had enough room. So you're starting to see me place down some taxiways here. You can tell it's like very difficult to see where they are. So you'll see why I deleted all this pavement, and later on I'll come and put it all back. I think next episode that happens. And the other thing that I did a second ago was I placed down the tunnel that connects all of these terminals. So it's a road tunnel, a freeway tunnel, and it pops up inside of each of these terminals, and there's a loop of road that goes around the inside of the terminal on the ground level, And then these airport stands, these kind of gates that you're seeing me connect up this taxiway to now, have access to that road. So if you're a citizen and you're trying to use the airport, in order to get to any of these gates, you have to go through this tunnel and then pop up in the individual loop for each terminal, and then get to that gate and board the airplane. So these gates, I tried to space them evenly. There's 2 for each terminal. And then you'll see in a second here, there's a cargo gate that's for the cargo part of the airport. And that's going to be sort of separate from this passenger terminal. The way it works is when planes land here, there's like a major intersection of taxiways, like right when they get off the runway. And if they go one direction, they go towards the passenger gates. If they go the other direction, they go towards the cargo gates. And then they'll all meet back up at the place where they can take off and leave the airport. So in terms of the episodes for the airport looking forward, there's going to be a cargo one, obviously, that's like its own entire area. There's going to be one for this passenger plane area, that's its own episode. And then we'll also do an entire episode on the areas that are like the entrance to the airport, like where the on-ramps and off-ramps for the freeway are, the sort of like airport loop where, you would drive around if you're trying to pick someone up or drop someone off at the airport. And that's sort of the focus of the rest of this episode, at least, is getting the functionality of that area set up. And that is by far the most interesting thing that happens here. And the reason it's so interesting is because my goal here was to have an upper loop and a lower loop similar to a real airport. But the thing about it that's different is that real airport, obviously, one is for arrivals and one's departures. And you can do that by having like roads. This is how I've always done it in the past. Roads that lead into the airport and connect to the actual gates. But I've always struggled with that because I don't really like how those roads, when cars try and get to the airport, they like literally just turn and drive into the airport itself. And I always thought that looked really weird watching cars like drive into the terminal. And I wanted this to be a lot more like the real thing, where if you're getting dropped off at the airport, you literally get dropped off and you walk into the terminal. Or if you're trying to leave the terminal, you walk out of the terminal, you wait around, you get picked up by a taxi. And so I did some very, very specific and a little bit weird things in order to do that. And I'll show you that here in a second. Let's get into a live play, and it'll be easier to show you there. Hey guys, so here we are in game, and I just wanted to do this so I could show you exactly how this works with this pickup and drop off area, and how I'm like forcing citizens to do very particular things in order to get to their desired gate. So obviously there's 3 different terminals, 2 gates at each terminal, and let's move these buildings out of the way so you can kind of see what's happening. So there's buses that go between the terminals, and there's a route to get to each terminal, a different route, 3 different bus routes. And these little areas that have sidewalks on the left and the right here are where they stop. So this guy right here, we'll take a look at him. He's going to the 3rd terminal. So there's obviously different buses that go to different terminals. And because this is a freeway in between these 2 areas, you can't get from one to the other inside the airport. You can only get to it from outside the airport. So if like this citizen down here, this little old man, Edward Young, wants to get to the left side, he would have to go upstairs and then walk over there. But he's obviously trying to go to this right side where these buses, let's see, this guy was the one who was just stopped there. He's going to the 2nd terminal. So basically what happens is a citizen will get dropped off at the top, and then they'll walk over here and go to the terminal that this bus takes you to, or they'll get dropped off at the bottom, walk through the tunnel, and go to the terminal that these buses over on the right side take you to. And it's pretty awesome because it means that cars, especially taxis, are actually picking people up. Like, people are getting into cars over here, and it means that people are like parking and walking into the airport. And it's a pretty cool little mechanic that's going on. But you can see like I have services here in the airport because it's literally like its own road network. Like this loop here and the loops that are inside of the terminals aren't connected to anything else in the entire map besides themselves, so obviously it needs its own, you know, crematorium and police station and fire station and trash. So it's a pretty cool little mechanic. These buses are dropping people off here at the specific gates and picking people up when they arrive from an airplane. And then you can see, because I don't have any pavement down anywhere, you can see like the potential routes for the airplanes. So like this right here is a cargo airplane, so it's gonna make a right turn here, go down here and go into the cargo area. But if there was a passenger airplane, it would land here and go straight and then head into one of these three potential areas where it could get to one of these three terminals. So that's basically how it works. It's functioning pretty well, all things considered. You can see just like how many cars are going into the airport. The citizens love the airport. So it's pretty exciting that it all works and that it's actually making a difference in the city in terms of, you know, cargo and getting goods, and people are really using it for getting in and out of the city as well. So things are looking good. I'm excited for next episode. We're gonna work on this area right here, so look forward to that. I'm City Walk, City Wall, and I'll see you all next time.